Welcome to a candidate forum featuring candidates for Sacramento County Sheriff. I'm Paula Lee, a volunteer and a member of the League of Women Voters and the moderator for today's forum. The forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County and the Sacramento Metro Cable Television Commission. It's being taped for rebroadcast on Metro Cable Channel 14, Sundays between now and Election Day. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization of men and women. Our mission is to encourage informed and active participation in government. We do this in two very distinct and separate ways, through education and through advocacy. The candidate forums are our education arm at work. The League does not support, oppose, or evaluate political candidates for office or parties, but we do take positions on public policy issues, and so you might see us taking positions on legislation or ballot measures, and that's with our advocacy arm. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate is going to make a 1-minute opening statement, and then the candidates will have a 1.5 minutes maximum to respond to the questions. If you can do it shorter, please do. The timer is here in the front row. Barbara there. Wave your sign, Barbara. She has a 30-second card that'll kind of give you an indication you have 30 seconds left, and she has a stop sign. Finally, the candidates will have up to a 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. The League promotes civil discourse, so we trust you will all stick to that. And now the candidates running for Sacramento County Sheriff are, on my far left, Brett Daniels, Donna Cox, and Milo Fitch. We drew earlier for speaking order, so we are going to begin with opening statements from Brett Daniels.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paula. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having us here. The public doesn't get an opportunity to see us too much before the election, and so this allows a good opportunity to get to know us a little bit. My qualifications are pretty nice, I think. They're pretty unique, actually. I'm the only candidate that has not only, I think, law enforcement experience, but private sector experience. I've been blessed to serve in the U.S. military, and I've had the opportunity to gain a lot of upper management and middle-level management experience since my time in law enforcement. We're having to go fast because we get 1 minute, but the platform is about many things, and hopefully you'll hear about those today. But mainly it's about reforming the Sheriff's Department. A change is needed, and it's time for a change. All three of us agree with that. Unfortunately, the person that doesn't is not here. And so hopefully you'll hear about that, but you can also learn more about us on our web pages and our Facebook pages. So please take the opportunity to get informed. Thank you.
Donna Cox.
Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for allowing this opportunity. As Brett said, we don't get that much opportunity. As you can see, I'm the first woman to run for the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, and I'm very proud of that. And I basically want to be the voice of the community. We definitely need a change. And my philosophy is the T philosophy. That is transparency, equality, and accountability, which is definitely needed. The incumbent has costed the taxpayers over $10 million, and he's still in office and no one is holding him accountable. So I am running to reset the moral compass of the department and basically give the County of Sacramento voters a different choice of options. An alternative choice here. I have 22 years of law enforcement experience. I've worked pretty much every division within the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, predominantly K-9 and CSI and Communications Division and both correctional facilities.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you, Paula, and League of Women Voters for the opportunity. I have 33 years experience with the Sacramento Sheriff's Department, where I promoted up through the ranks to the position of Chief Deputy. When I retired, I was over all of corrections and the medical department. I retired for a couple of years, and now I currently am the Chief of the Workforce Development Branch for the California Prison Industry Authority. And in that role, I oversee all of the career technical education programs throughout the state in the 35 prisons. I thank you for the opportunity to have a good discussion today on all the different issues that are before us today in this community, and I look forward to the questions and answers that come. Thank you.
Okay, let's get going with the questions. And we'll start with Brett Daniels, and then I will be rotating who I ask a question first. First question, Brett Daniels. The Sacramento Police Department has begun releasing body camera and dash cam video of all use of force incidents. And the LAPD recently adopted a similar policy of releasing body cam video within 45 days of a critical incident. The Sheriff's Department, the largest law enforcement agency in our region, refuses to do so. Should that policy be changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. It's 2018, and somehow the sheriff has been lost in the past regarding this. Video doesn't always tell the story, but it can help understand the story and figure out what happened. I think what needs to happen, though, is we have to be very careful with how we release video coverage. It can actually inflame a situation as opposed to inform. But people are intelligent, and I think that if you can take a very careful approach and release information along with the video as to what happened during the situation, it can do a lot to inform people. And a lot of times I think our issues within the community that have caused anger are found in miscommunication and a lack of communication. And that's been one problem with this sheriff, and it's caused a fracture in the community. That's one of the reasons, again, there needs to be a change in the department. We need to rebuild our community trust. And one of the ways that we can do that is being transparent and making sure folks understand and know what happened to the greatest extent possible, and certainly body camera footage can help do that.
Donna Cox?
Yes, I'm obviously for this. It's all over my social media. The incumbent, for whatever reason, I've heard he doesn't like the body cameras, which I'm 100% body cameras, and also releasing the videos. It's shameful that they spent over $980,000 on a project last June where he could have purchased the body cams, and so now all of a sudden, he's coming out and saying he's for them and he's going to get them, but we're behind. It's 2018. This should have been done. I believe Sac PD said they already had theirs a year ago, and they were still in the testing. So as soon as I get into office, which would be January of 2019, immediately we will have those in operation and with the policies and procedures set in order. I believe that what we saw recently with the Stephon Clark incident, it definitely helped with transparency, and obviously sometimes in a negative situation, but for the most part, when we're showing the public what our officers are going through and how they have to make a split-second decision, this helps. And it also helps when with complaints, when people will say that officers say things and they haven't and they're innocent. So I do believe that definitely a positive.
Milo Fitch?
Thank you. The sheriff has had 8 years to purchase body cameras, and he's only now even looking at it because it's a campaign. We need to have body cameras in the Sheriff's Department. I asked the question also, why are the Sacramento Police Department officers required to turn their body cameras off when they go into the main jail? What is being tried to be hidden in this regard? As far as lethal force issues go, we do have other video that exists. We have in-car cameras. But in a recent debate that I was at with the sheriff, he explained why he has not ever released those videos in a lethal force situation. And that was because he gave the right of the family of the deceased to review the videos before he ever made that public. And so far to date, he claims that the family has never wanted to release the video. I think that's a disservice to the public. I think the public has a right of transparency, and in my opinion, he's hiding behind a veil.
All right, this time we begin with you, Donna Cox. Officer-involved shootings are now investigated by the department itself, with the findings then turned over to the DA's office for review. The county's Inspector General also reviews such incidents, but has little authority to take action in such incidents. Should there be an independent review board with authority to impose penalties or sanctions set up to review officer-involved shooting incidents?
Absolutely. I believe in other agencies, they also have the grand jury will come in, and I definitely think this is something that needs to be looked into, just because there's so many different situations, and as far as accountability goes, and when you're putting it out to the public, there's a lot of distrust. So you want to be as most transparency to the public as much as you can, because unfortunately, we have a lot of corruption, obviously, throughout the whole nation, and because people see that corruption, they distrust the local government. So that's exactly why I'm running for sheriff, because I want to reset the moral compass to step in and have the strength and honor to show the public that I mean business, and I'm going to hold officers accountable. I'm not going to let people have bad or shady investigations. There's just too many shady investigations, as we see. I mean, every day you're watching the news, and people are tired of it. And we need a change, and we need someone to go get into these offices, such as sheriff, and show that we need to make a difference and hold people accountable and make sure these investigations are completely thorough and not biased in any way.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you. If we're to gain the trust of the public back, we need to have an independent source evaluating all deadly force situations, not just shootings. We must have in-custody deaths also evaluated by a third party. We no longer can have it a DA who's taking large sums of money during a campaign from law enforcement when that person is the ultimate decision maker. We must gain the trust of the public through transparency and a fair evaluation of those incidents that did occur that ended in death.
Brett Daniels.
Thank you very much. I think we have to make sure we're looking at it from a realistic angle. The aspect of police shootings are actually very rare. They don't happen a lot, but when they do happen, it's a serious matter. The government has the right to instantly take your life, and if that happens, that's something that should be thoroughly investigated. I don't think it's a correct process to have the agency that is responsible for that do the investigation of the matter. There's a vested interest in finding that it was a proper response to whatever occurred. So there's a built-in bias right there, right from the beginning. That doesn't mean that happens, but there is that aspect. So as sheriff, one of the first things I will do is look to establish a state task force that responds to situations where officers have been involved in shooting that have resulted in the loss of life. We do that now with other situations. We do have task force that are formed to respond to even lesser type crime, not crimes, but lesser situations. And so the aspect of a life being lost is something that's tragic. It is something that should be looked into as much as possible, and to remove any level of hopefully any bias or anything towards that investigation. I would work to form, again, a state task force of law enforcement agencies throughout the state to respond to any law enforcement shootings that result in death.
Milo Fitch, first question for you. The Sheriff's Department has paid out millions in settlement and lawsuits involving jail deaths and instances of deputies shooting or beating suspects, including last year's $6.5 million jury award in the death of Jonathan Rose. Is there a need for better and different training for all deputies in the use of force, especially when dealing with mentally ill suspects?
Yes, absolutely. A large population of our jail and those that we encounter have some level of mental illness. And we need, as first responders, to be able to de-escalate situations as best as possible. And we're not going to be able to do that unless we have effective training in how to deal with the mentally ill. So I'm a big proponent of additional training, both for crisis intervention training and also for implicit bias. I think that if we can have our officers best trained in the state, as such, we're one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the state, and we should be modeling the behavior for others to follow.
Brett Daniels?
Yeah, again, these are extreme tragedies, and I'm going to correct Donna. She was a little bit wrong earlier when she said this sheriff has cost us $10 million. That's just one lawsuit, okay? There's been multiple lawsuits where the decision-making by the sheriff and top brass have cost county taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. So we do need to do something different. Obviously, there's a problem if this is the result. So we do need to find a way to better train the officers, to have more resources available that can respond. Unfortunately, in these situations, a lot of them happen so quickly that you might not be able to get a counselor that might be riding with a deputy to that scene in enough time. But the reality of it is we need to figure out a way to do things better. And one of the things that we can do, that we can control, is better training and better access. And so as sheriff, I would advocate for that. As society, we also need to be stepping up and saying, there's too many situations where those that are suffering from mental illness are out on the streets. If we didn't have that occurring, then we wouldn't have some of these and probably a lot of these situations, and that goes towards our homeless also. So this is a societal problem, not just a law enforcement problem, and we do need to step up as society and say maybe we need to start examining the aspect of those that truly need mental health being removed and given help, and then hopefully we wouldn't have this many situations.
Donna Cox?
Well, nationwide, the number one problem is mental health issues. It directly relates to many of our officer-involved shootings, and also it directly relates to homelessness. As far as the training that's going on currently within the Sheriff's Department, I retired in August of 2016, and they were changing and sending everyone to 24-hour and also 1 week long courses, and then certain officers were becoming experts in this area. And then, as Brett mentioned, the different outside help riding with the officers, it's amazing. So I can't complain too much of what kind of training is going on right now as directly related to mental health, but I do want to focus on our academy because that's where it starts. And when you have training officers at the academy who have never even been training officers in the public eye, out in patrol, I think that's shameful. We have a lot of great officers out there that are training officers that have been passed up and not able to train at the academy. And that's where it all starts. So as sheriff, that's where I want to promote people with seniority and merit basis, not just who you are related to and your friends. Thank you.
Okay, Brett Daniels. The department has been accused of fostering a quote-unquote bro culture that includes retaliation against employees who speak out, a situation that resulted in more than $10 million in judgments and legal fees for 4 female deputies who sued over their treatment. How would you change the department's culture?
Well, let me correct you. The department has not been accused of that. They've been found to be that. A jury came out in 2016 and found a culture of preferential treatment and harassment. That didn't start with this sheriff, that started with the previous sheriff. And from that has grown into, again, this culture of a department that does not handle its dirty laundry. This sheriff's response to the 2 people directly involved in that lawsuit was not to do an investigation and find out if they were responsible. He instead has promoted them to his number 2 and 3 positions in the department today. So what would I do different? On day 1, I would fire them. They need to be held responsible. They need to be fired. And from that, the department needs to understand that that kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated. Donna touched on this a little bit. And when you allow behavior at the top, as that has happened, it filters down, and we need to make sure that stops. So making sure that the department understands that those kind of behaviors are not going to be tolerated. You're not going to be rewarded, definitely, for such behavior, and it just needs to stop, and people need to be treated fairly. They need to be treated according to their abilities and skills and not something else that might be involved with them, and that just needs to stop.
Donna Cox?
Well, let's just put it this way. If we were in Los Angeles County right now, the incumbent would not even be running. He threw his name on the ballot at the last minute. Well, 2 days after I don't know who's responsible, but his consultant contacted me and browbeat me for two hours on trying to not get me to run. The reason why they didn't want me to run, because I was actual witness on this case, and I know for a fact that all of this happened. And as far as the Me Too movement, I don't know why they're not in Sacramento, because like he said, the number 1 and 2 man, they shouldn't even be there. They should have stepped down. It's embarrassing that the county is not holding these people accountable. And as far as the way I would handle it, well, it's easy. Again, the T philosophy: transparency, equality, and accountability. And stop favoritism. You have to stop the favoritism. If one of your buddies screws up, you know what? You're going to have a talk with your buddy and just say, hey, I'm sorry, maybe this law enforcement career isn't for you. And that's pretty much the only thing I can say on this. I would like to add one thing is these things have been going on for years. And as one of our opponents up here said, he has 33 years of experience. And I know that he was in charge of one of these guys, the number 2 man. So I would hope that he would add that maybe he didn't see this type of behavior under his authority.
Milo Fitch.
Well, first, I need to address that because that's absolutely not true. That's a lie. I was a lieutenant. Manis was a captain. And I was tasked with an interrogation with another captain in that investigation. He did not work for me, so that's not true. Okay. I was the one that went to court and told the truth in that case. Now to the question. Culture comes from the leadership, and we've seen a lack of leadership in the Sheriff's Department that has brought on this good old boy culture. He's brought up people into positions that have not done their job adequately, and he's surrounded himself with people that kind of mirror his own development in the department, where he has had 10 months in patrol. And that's not the way that we command an organization in law enforcement. We need to have people that are promoted based on their merit for doing a good job, those that uphold the values of the organization, and those that impugn the values of the organization, they need to go. So as far as changing the good old boy system, we need a change in the sheriff. Thank you.
Donna Cox. Sheriff Jones met with President Trump this year and described Sacramento as ground zero in the battle over sanctuary cities. Should the Sheriff's Department side with the Trump administration in its lawsuit against California over sanctuary cities?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that we need sanctuary cities. That's where I stand. For all people and the undocumented people that are here in Sacramento County, they're also victims. There are people that are running from Mexico that are afraid. We all know about the corruption that's going down there with the cartel. And as far as the way I believe is treating all people fair, and if they're here, the undocumented are here, and they're a victim or they're a witness or they're a suspect, they should be treated appropriately. And this question is obviously more of a higher level than sheriff, because it's out of our scope of duty as far as chasing people down that are undocumented. That's something. I have 13 years of patrol experience, and while I was out in patrol, I've never had any situation of chasing people down and calling ICE and telling them we have to deport them. I feel that it's obviously necessary if someone is arrested and they go to jail and they are a danger to society, and when we release them, then obviously I'm a team player, and I like to work with outside agencies. But again, this question I feel is like a bigger societal problem than just sheriff. As sheriff, you enforce the laws, not make them.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you. As sheriff, we're sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the laws of California and the Constitution of California as well. The Senate Bill 54 was passed and is the law of the land here in California. I fully support the law, and I believe that we have seen a chilling effect occur after Sheriff Jones' visit to Washington, D.C., where he met with President Trump. He said that, like you mentioned, that we are at ground zero, and we've had spectacular failures with regards to immigration. We're a very diverse community here in Sacramento County with many different immigrants from many different countries. And what he has effectively done is send a shockwave through those communities to instill fear. And people now from those communities may be afraid to report a crime that they're a victim of out of fear of deportation. So I don't agree with Scott Jones' opinion or practice in this manner, and I will change that.
Brett Daniels.
Well, ditto to about half of what Milo said, and ditto to all of what Donna said. The interesting thing is we're answering a question about Scott Jones, the guy that's not here. The guy that's not here. So we obviously, I think, can see the problem. I think Donna really touched on something really important in her 13 years of being on the streets and not having to deal with this. I had maybe not quite as much, but I responded to about 20,000 law enforcement calls in my career. The issue never came up one time, not one time. It's not an issue for law enforcement. It can be an issue for the jail system. When I'm sheriff, I would certainly not allow officers to engage folks that are witnesses and victims of crimes in regards to their immigration status. That's not our job. That's a federal job. And so the federal authorities need to take care of that. But if you find your way to our jail and you victimize somebody, and I think one of the things that's always missing from this discussion is I do honestly believe that within the community of folks that are illegal, people are victimized in this community by people who know they likely will not report the crimes that have occurred to them. And we need to do something about that. And so if you victimize somebody, if you're a predator and you harm somebody and you come to our jail, you do not need to be in our country. And I will work with the federal government to make sure that you are not here.
Milo Fitch. Last month, U.S. Attorney McGregor Scott announced that his office filed for the civil forfeiture of a few dozen houses that were involved in illegal marijuana growing operations across the Sacramento region. What is your view of the civil forfeiture option against criminal marijuana activity? Do you agree with U.S. Attorney that it is a game changer?
So with the law change now relative to legalization of cannabis, I think we're going to see legal grows in a professional manner, and hopefully our illegal grows that we've experienced to a very large extent in homes, many times rented homes, are going to curtail. In the meantime, I do agree with a civil forfeiture with McGregor Scott.
Brett Daniels?
Yeah, I think as far as the concept, I certainly agree, but I think extreme caution needs to occur. One of the things that makes us different from every other country, in the world is our Constitution, and we need to protect our Constitution. And so if the government is going to come and take your property, there has to be a very compelling reason. But if we find that you've engaged in criminal activity, and the criminal activity is a part of the assets that you've been able to gain from the criminal activity, absolutely, that you should lose that property. And so I do support the concept of that, but it has to be done with extreme caution.
Donna Cox?
Yes, I also support, like Brett said, regarding with caution. My opinion on the whole thing is hopefully soon it will be completely legal, and then that way we won't have to have all these different issues. And I believe that eventually when it is legal, 100%, I mean, obviously that would have to be at a federal level as well. Hopefully we can have more taxes on, obviously, the marijuana growers and the different companies. And with those taxes, with that money, we can afford more officers. Because the main problem that we have on the street right now is that we don't have enough officers, and then the officers that we do have on the street are overworked. And I know that's a little bit off topic from the subject of marijuana, but I did want to throw it in there and my belief system, because that's just what I believe about the marijuana becoming illegal or legal eventually.
Brett Daniels. Over the past several months, parents and students have raised concerns over the sheriff's school resource officers who work in the Elk Grove School District. They believe that officers have mistreated students, like treating them like criminals, and overreacted over minor disciplinary issues. What is your response to their concerns?
Well, I don't really have the ability to address their concerns. I don't have intimate knowledge of the actual facts over there. But you know what? Here's the deal. We need to make sure that we provide the resources to keep our children safe. And by doing that, like in Citrus Heights, what we do is we provide the two school resource officers for our high schools. We fund that. I've sat down with a gentleman who's very connected to, I have to be very careful the words I use, so a school district that provides deputy sheriffs, that uses deputy sheriffs for their schools. The sheriff won't sit down and cooperate with them on developing a much more reasonable approach to the cost. The sheriff currently charges them about $85 an hour to put a deputy there, and a different deputy goes every day, so there's no ownership. I don't know if they do that in Elk Grove, but that could be one of the issues. In Citrus Heights, our officers have a very intimate relationship with students. They're very well received. They have great positive relationships, and that's what we need. So as sheriff, I will develop a division that has school resource officers permanently assigned, and will partner with the school districts to reduce the cost to way less than 1/2 of what they're paying now, and that'll allow more officers to actually be involved in schools. It's just the reality, folks. We need to have officers in our schools to protect our kids.
Donna Cox.
It is very important to have the right officer who is assigned to these schools. And the problem with the Sheriff's Department as we speak is that they want their officers to move around every 2 to 3 years in order to promote and say, to get more knowledgeable all over the board. Well, the problem with this philosophy is you don't have any experts. And especially with our kids, in the school district, you want the best officer, someone that has passion, desire, someone who wants to work there. Not everybody wants to work around children, and like the way we have seen, there's been some complaints, and with those complaints, it's usually a personality issue with the officers. The kids think the officer's a bully, or he's mean, or she, whoever's the officer assigned there. And so again, as sheriff, I want to make sure that I'm not having my officers move around. I want to make sure that the best officers are in the best places, and people that want to work with the children and want to work at schools are the best school officers. Thank you.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you. We've seen schools adopt a no-tolerance policy, and many times it leads to expulsion. What we've seen in our jails and prisons is that the average reading level is 7th grade. If people do not graduate from high school, they are much more likely to go to jail or prison. This is also known as the school-to-prison pipeline. I believe our school resource officers can be a very effective resource for stopping this practice, to actually help with the students to make sure that they graduate and graduate on time. We cannot be viewed as an us versus them. We have to be a partner with the students and a partner with all of our educators and administrators in each of the schools. So I'll work very hard in developing good relationships with each of our school resource officers and each of our school districts to make sure this happens. Thank you.
Donna Cox. Do you agree with the current process for obtaining a concealed weapons permit?
I do, 100%, and I'm glad that you brought this question up. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, and I hope that's not what it is, but for some reason everyone thinks that I want to become sheriff and take everyone's guns away, and that is not the case at all. I was born and raised in Harold, a population of 900. My dad was on the department for 35 years, and we have guns. I believe that everyone, if they are able to apply and go through the training, if they're mentally capable, by all means, please apply for your CCW. I know that there's some slow ups with the process right now, but it's not even at the county level. It's also at the state level. I believe they only have one person doing the fingerprint backgrounds. So as far as the process goes right now, the only thing I'd like to do is an internal investigation. I have gotten wind that possibly the donors list kind of matches the CCW, so I would definitely want to make sure this is not a true belief.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you. So I have a very differing opinion. I believe that some people do have a need for a concealed weapon permit, and those people, if they do pass all of the requirements, should be issued a concealed weapon. But that's not the average person. Most people do not have the ability to demonstrate a true need. This is also an unfunded liability for the Sheriff's Department. It's about $275,000 a year that is not funded by the county to issue these concealed weapons. You know, we just talked about schools. Many people volunteer at the schools, and they're out of pocket that live scan expense. I would rather redirect this unfunded liability to our volunteers that are going into our schools to help make the school environment much safer and better for all of our educators and students.
Brett Daniels.
Yeah, well, let me just say I'm very concerned about Milo's language of need. You have a right under the United States Constitution to keep and bear arms. And so you can object to the issue or support the issue, but what you can't object or support is the right. The right has been affirmed by the Constitution under Heller and McDonald, and so it's there. And if you want that changed, then you should work to change the Constitution. So to exercise your right is something that you have. As a government agency, if I'm going to restrict your right, I'm the one that has to have a compelling reason to do so. So if people want to get a CCW in Sacramento County, they will be able to do so, definitely. This issue has been around for 20 years, back when Sheriff Blandis and Sheriff McGinnis pretty much would only release to what Donna mentioned earlier, people on the list. And so I've been an advocate of people's rights to keep and bear arms for 20 years in running for sheriff, and it will certainly continue. It's the one thing that not the one thing, but one of the things the sheriff has done that I would commend him on. And the problem, though, is something that Donna touched on, too, is there's a delay, and we need to eliminate the delay. You should not be delayed in exercising a constitutional right. You shouldn't have to bear a cost that's a burden on you to be able to exercise a right. So we need to look at that and make sure we can clean those areas up. But certainly I would support the continued effort to allow people to protect themselves.
Okay, it's time for closing remarks. And we're going to mix it up. We'll start closing remarks with Donna Cox.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor up here today to represent the first woman to run for Sacramento Sheriff, which I'm happy about. Like I said, I want to get back to the T philosophy: transparency, accountability, equality. I believe that if we hold our officers and our managers at a higher level, and problems and millions of dollars will not have to be charged by the county. I also believe that I think the communities are tired of not being heard, and I want to be the voice. I want to represent the communities. Basically, we've had a race war going on, and it needs to stop. We all need to stick together and enjoy our differences, not hate each other. We have to get rid of the hate. We have to stop the us versus them mentality. It's time for change, and my hashtag is be the change. So please vote for me, and I will represent the county in a positive manner. Thank you.
Brett Daniels.
Thank you. You know, the thing you're going to hear today, the word is change, change, change. It's obvious there needs to be a change. And it's unfortunate, but the guy that needs to be changed is the guy that doesn't have the courage to be here today. He's not here for a couple of reasons. And the first one is he doesn't want the job. He told you he doesn't want the job. He told you he was retiring. He had had enough. He was done. He was going away. And he picked somebody, and that didn't work out. And then he thought, well, I better come back because I don't want an outsider to have the job. And that's why he's not here today. He's not here because he doesn't want to answer the tough questions. I really commend Paula and the questions because some of the issues were brought up that are the tough questions. But it's very unfortunate the person who really needs to answer the questions is not here. And so I hope that you keep that in mind. I want to commend Donna for having the courage to be the first woman to step up and run for sheriff of Sacramento County. I want to commend Milo for stepping up and running for sheriff of Sacramento County. I've done it a couple times. It's not fun, folks. It takes a lot of courage. You get put through things unless you're like the sheriff and you just don't show up. But keep that in mind. Please take the time to get more informed. There's a lot of information out there about us. We have Facebook pages. We have websites. Dig into it and find out which one of us actually would be the better sheriff, because any of us will be better than what we have today. Thank you.
Milo Fitch.
Thank you. So a lot of politicians talk about being tough on crime. We've seen, the war on drugs, determinate sentencing, the 3 strikes law, and what that has all led to is mass incarceration. And we're not safer for it. What we need to be is smart on crime. We need community justice. We need to embrace community-oriented policing and effective rehabilitation programs for the offenders in the jails so that when they are released, they can be self-sufficient and law-abiding citizens. And I will bring that to the Sheriff's Department. We need fairness and equality in our communities and in the Sheriff's Department. As was said before, we need a change. And I will be a sheriff for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. That concludes our forum. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters and Sacramento Metro Cable, thank you, candidates, very much for participating in this. It's really helpful for voters. And thanks to all the volunteers that were here today to make this forum possible. The League has some great resources for you voters out there. If you haven't filled out your ballot yet, we have a great resource for facts about candidates and ballot measures. It's called Voters Edge, and the website is votersedge.org, votersedge.org/California. When you go to Voters Edge, you can put your address in, and you can get your custom ballot with all the races just for you there. And then you can click on a candidate's name, any one of these candidates perhaps. I hope you're all on Voters Edge, candidates, because the voter will click on your name and then learn more about you, learn your priorities, and learn who's endorsed you. Right there, it'll show the voters who's contributed to your campaign, and how much they've contributed. So voters, lots of information at votersedge.org. It'll also tell you where you can drop your ballot. For those of you who have voted by mail in the past, you probably recognized this form this week when this envelope when it showed up in your mailbox. It looks quite official. For the 36% of the people in Sacramento County who do not vote by mail, this may be something they don't recognize, so that's why I'm showing it to you. Inside the white envelope is a pink envelope, and it's your ballot. Every voter got a ballot this week, and you have 3 choices on what to do with it. You can put it in the mail. After you fill it out, put it in the pink envelope. Be sure you sign it right here. Very important that you sign it. That's how we make sure our elections are secure and you haven't voted more than once. And put 2 stamps on it. If you'd rather not mail it in the mail, there's lots of other opportunities too. You can use a drop box. Drop boxes will be located throughout the county right now. They're all available at all county public libraries. So if you have a library near you, think about where it is and know that you don't have to go to one particular place this time to vote. You can drop that ballot anywhere at a county library. Also, you can go to a full-service vote center. If you'd like to vote in person, if you've lost your ballot, if you spilled coffee on it, you can get another one. You can register to vote at a vote center. You can re-register to vote. If you're 16 or 17, you can go in there and pre-register to vote, and you'll get a ballot when you're 18. So it's a full-service center. And those centers are all listed at Voter's Edge and also in your ballot pamphlet. So now with all those opportunities to vote, by the way, those vote centers, some of them will be open 11 days before the election. That means 2 whole weekends that you can vote, including Memorial Weekend. So no excuses. Vote, use your voice, and help make democracy work. Thanks.